This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
I just was suddenly in a world with no roadmap. I felt like I got dropped onto a new planet and it was like, find your way. And there was no way, no arrows, no nothing. So what that led me to was really to reach out to other widowed people. And I just started saying to everyone I knew, do you know anybody who's widowed? It reminds me of that Dr. Seuss book, Are You My Mother? It was like, are you widowed? Excuse me, are you widowed? Hello, hi, are you widowed?
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. Michele Neff Hernandez of Soaring Spirits International is here to share how she turned her personal loss into an organization supporting widowed people all over the world. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
As a caregiver, you want comfort and dignity for your patient and convenience for yourself. The Quick Change Wrap offers all of that with a life-changing way to address male incontinence. It folds around the source of urine and wicks it away, protecting surrounding skin, clothing, and bedding. Use the Quick Change by itself or with an adult diaper for superior protection. A single caregiver can quickly change the wrap with no lifting or turning the patient. 800 hospitals use it. Now you can get it at home. Visit quickchange.com now. This episode of The Heart of Hospice is sponsored by Odonata Care. Odonata's motto is, Care is Treatment. They've made it their mission to transform the end-of-life experience for the patient and caregivers through education and support. With 50 free YouTube videos that teach bedside care and their booklet, The Care Plan, A Path to Comfort for the Hospice Patient, Odonata Care is revolutionizing the hospice experience. Visit thecareplan.net for more information. Now here's today's episode.
You may not think that hospice is a good fit with my guest today, with the work that she's doing, but I'm going to tell you that it really, really is. You're going to be moved by my guest and her story and the work that her organization is doing. Michele Neff Hernandez is with me today. She is a nonprofit leader, a compelling speaker, and a committed advocate for widowed people all around the world. She's the founder and executive director of Soaring Spirits International, which is a nonprofit organization. They provide research-based programs and a community of peers for anyone who has experienced the death of a spouse or partner. And you may not think that has anything to do with hospice. But I'm here to tell you, if you're a hospice professional who works in a bereavement program, you're going to want to be connected with this organization, with the free resources they provide. Notice I said free, because that's always important to a hospice agency when it comes to bereavement care, and the ability to provide an ongoing support even once your bereavement care, your bereavement period is over with for your hospice agency, to provide that continued care for your families. You're going to want to listen and hear what they're doing at Soaring Spirits International. She's got an amazing story. Of course, it's all founded on a personal experience. She lost her husband at a young age in a bicycle accident, and it left her with 6 kids. A blended family that she had to support and care for as she learned how to navigate her way through her widowhood and her grief. So here's my conversation with Michele Neff Hernandez of Soaring Spirits International. Michele, it's so good to have you on the show. Welcome.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we had to turn on the recording because we got started talking and had a lot of good stuff coming. So we don't want to lose any of it. We want to capture it. So let's start at the beginning. Best place to start. What was the impetus for starting Soaring Spirits International? What got you started there?
Well, as many stories begin, someone died. And I often tell people, when you trace a person's story, a historical figure, anyone, you kind of go back through their lifetimes. A lot of times a pivotal part of transformation is the death of somebody important in their life. And for me, that was my late husband, Philip Hernandez. I like to tell people he looked a lot like Superman. If he was a beautiful Mexican man with the teeny tiniest chicken legs, but on the top, he looked like Superman. He was an athlete, a track coach, and a dad to his 3 kids and a stepdad to my 3 kids, and went out for a bike ride on a sunny late summer evening in 2005 and was hit and killed early in the evening that day. I was called to the scene of the accident from a bystander. I had no idea what I was walking into. Because of his Superman-like person, I expected that getting hit by a car meant that he was harmed, but it didn't ever occur to me that he would die. And so in the early stages of arriving, it became clear that things were worse than I thought. And he died in emergency room less than an hour later. I was 35. He was 39, 2 months away from his 40th birthday. And I had never even thought about the word widowed. I didn't have a single idea what. I remember immediately thinking, like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, are there rules? Are there checklists? Are there, like, how do you do this? And for me, doing this also meant, helping 6 grieving kids. And so I immediately was launched into a world that was completely foreign to me. I was really well supported. I have an amazing family. I had a great support network. We had great friends, but nobody was widowed. And I felt like everybody was looking at me wondering, what do we do now? And I was in the middle thinking, what do we do now? And so that sort of led me on an exploratory journey of like, well, now what am I supposed to do? And I didn't know who to ask because as a younger widowed person, I was looking for role models of people who had done this and looking for people who could tell me that I could make it through. And, I think that sometimes it feels so dramatic when people talk about grief because it feels so intense. And unless you've lived through something that you could feel that intensity yourself, it's like, really, you really didn't know if you were going to survive? Well, legit, I did not know if I was going to survive because I felt like this pain could kill me and I couldn't understand why it hadn't. And at the same time, I had 6 kids that were counting on me and, a family of people and lots of people I loved. I just was suddenly in a world with no roadmap. I felt like I got dropped onto a new planet and it was like, find your way. And there was no way, no arrows, no nothing. So what that led me to was really to reach out to other widowed people. And I just started saying to everyone I knew, do you know anybody who's widowed? It reminds me of that Dr. Seuss book, Are You My Mother? It was like, are you widowed? Excuse me, are you widowed? Hello, hi, are you widowed? So what that ended up doing was offering me the opportunity to hear a number of stories and to feel understood in a way that I had not yet experienced. Meeting other widowed people changed my life. And the short story to the end of this really is that it led me to want to offer that opportunity to other widowed people. And I built Soaring Spirits with a team of amazing people because I wanted it to be easier for someone to wake up in the land of widowed worlds and see that there was actually an arrow and that there was a direction you could be pointed to find other people who aren't going to be able to craft your experience or your road for you. Each of us have to do that on our own. but we can do it in the company of others who have done it as well. And that made all the difference for me.
You created the network that you needed.
Yeah, I did. And I don't know that I did it with that intentionality. I was very still early in my widowed life when all of this started happening. I just felt called to build community. I felt like it was, yes, it was for me, but it was for everyone who was going to come after me, because I kept thinking like, this has got to be easier to find other widowed people, especially because as a younger widowed person going into a group, let's say, and I did look into groups, but no one was raising kids. I just didn't see myself reflected in the groups that I had access to. And in part, that's true, I think, for every experience of grief. It's like you're only able to access whomever happens to have had a death and is at that exact location that you are. And so the limiting factors of needing to have the group be in person and physically present were difficult for me, because in my situation, there wasn't anybody who shared something like me. I had to go afield to find that. And when I did, it was like, okay, so Soaring Spirits, for the listeners who are like, what in the heck is she still talking about? Soaring Spirits is a nonprofit organization designed to provide programs, resources, and community for widowed people, built by widowed people, all custom designed to address the death of a spouse or partner. And to be clear, we define a widowed person as anyone who has experienced the death of the person they thought they were going to spend their life with. That includes all genders. It includes all relationship makeups. It includes complicated relationships where perhaps you've been divorced or you had an addiction situation in your relationship and you always thought there was going to be a time when you were going to make your way through and come back to each other. We encompass the whole human experience as it relates to a partner relationship that was intended to be long-term. And when that person dies, you're welcome in any of the programs that are created and supported by Soaring Spirits.
I think that's super important because you were looking for another widow who looked like you.
Yeah.
There were plenty of widows that were older,
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect. I'm sure they grieve in their own way, right? But it didn't look like somebody who was supporting 6 children and trying to navigate what that would look like, parenting children who were grieving, younger people who were grieving. And what you did was create relatable members or relatable participants in Soaring Spirits so that everybody can go to Soaring Spirits and say, hey, I connect with this person because their experience reflects mine.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, at the time, what I didn't know was that I could learn a lot from and get a lot of comfort from people who had a completely different experience than I did. But because it was so new, I felt like I needed to see myself reflected in order to feel confident that I could then find someone who would be able to share their experience with me and I would find it relatable. As you said, what has been so interesting in building this community is to discover that when you bring people together from all walks of life, this is a thing, because especially because grief is part of the human experience and because widowhood is part of the partner experience for most people, you have this opportunity to bring this hugely diverse group of people into a space together. And what's beautiful about it is that as a young widowed person, I can speak to an older widowed person who had their person for a longer time. They were together for a longer time. Their whole lives were entwined in ways that I didn't have the opportunity to do because we had a shorter relationship and we learn from each other. It's a beautiful gift. And at the same time, in any one of Soaring Spirits programs can also, this is a great example. We had a community of people who asked us, could we have a group for farm widowed people? Farm
widows, like farmers?
Farmers, yes, because when your person died, if the two of you were together farming and you own a farm, now you are the single person in charge of everything about the farm.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Sure. And sure enough, there is a table that we put up. It says farm widowed. And those people come together and they can talk about how they're managing, agriculturally, what they do with the animals, how do they feel about taking care of that tractor, the tractor on which their person died, or, so it's everything from as broad as you can get to as narrow as you can get, that being understood and having your experience validated is a key part of building resilience in the widowed experience.
I find that pretty amazing. So anybody can come to Soaring Spirits with their own individual, unique, because every loss, right? Every loss is unique. And they find a reflection, they find those commonalities.
We work really hard to make that possible. And, I always like to say, and of course, there's a bajillion different ways that we connect. But what we also try to do is make sure that there are multiple opportunities. So let's say the person comes to me and says, I own a farm. My partner and I ran it together. I'd like to find other widowed people like me. Oh, absolutely. Our team does the best we can to help you find those people. But we will also help you find people who maybe live near you, who are maybe the same age as you, who perhaps were widowed in the same year as you, who, for many people, if they were widowed during the pandemic, maybe not because directly of COVID-19, but because they happened to be widowed at that time by another method, those people also look for each other because it was a crazy time. And the opportunity to mourn was so impacted by what restrictions we had at the time. And so there's a million different things that can connect us. And so what we hope is that people will come to any of our programs and have multiple opportunities from various perspectives around the widowed life experience to be able to find others who can relate to them with whom they can both validate experience and also talk through some of the unique parts of what it's like to outlive your person.
You have some unique programs, and there are different types, some remote, some in person. So I'd like to talk about some of those. So let's start with Widow Pen Pal. That's, I guess, not your biggest program, but it was one that I was interested in. Tell me about that program.
I'm so glad you picked that one because it's so funny. Honestly, I thought this program would have gone away by now, long, long ago. So it has an interesting history in that one of the people that I met in those early days when I was looking for another widowed person like me is my brother-in-law's cousin. So my brother-in-law's cousin's name is Michele. She's the same age as me. And she was widowed 2 months after me.
Oh, wow.
And I know, right? So my sister reached out to me and said, hey, Dan's family also had a death recently. And I was hoping you could reach out to his cousin and just, I was thinking to myself, just what? Tell her this is like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Is it also the worst that happened to you? ? Like, I just didn't know what I was supposed to say to her. I had been widowed for 2 months at the time. And so I sent a random email and I don't even know, kind of was just like, well, hi, my sister asked me to reach out. And it took her a couple of months to respond because widowhood. But when she did, we began an email correspondence that has turned into a lifelong friendship. She's my best friend. We have been best friends for nearly 20 years. And what we realized was here, she lived in Texas. I lived in California. We were the same age. So we figured like we were close enough in age that there were a lot of life experiences we would be living, just as life trajectory plays out. And we both had kids. And so when I first was getting ready to launch this idea for Soaring Spirits, I thought, okay, well, we've got to offer people something. What can we possibly offer them? And I thought, well, maybe we can create this opportunity for people to have pen pals, because Michele and I were basically pen pals. It would be like, I would write an email and just wait for her response. Same for her. It was the way of emptying my brain and just throwing it out into the world. But I knew it was going to be caught on the other side by somebody who was living my experience as well. And she would do the same. And so we had this beautiful correspondence by email. And I thought, well, maybe we could just make some pen pals. And so that's what we did. So I created the program. I hired a programmer who was a young entrepreneur, and he developed it for me. And all of a sudden it occurred to me that if we launched this, what if there weren't any pen pal matches? Like it suddenly was like, oh no, I'm going to say this out loud to people. You can sign up. And then I'll be like, uh-oh, do I have to be everyone's pen pal because nobody signs up?
Oh my gosh.
And so like, this is like, I had no idea what I was doing. So it turns out literally 8 people signed up on the first day. And they were matches for each other. And from that time to this, there is a countless number of matches. Just recently at an in-person event in Tampa, I had a woman come up to me and say, I just want to thank you so much for the Pen Pal program. My pen pal and I are here together meeting for the first time. We're sharing a hotel room and we're here at Camp Widow together. And it's all because we've had this beautiful correspondence. And so that very thing that happened for Michele and I has happened again and again and again. And the way the program works is that you decide you want to have a pen pal. You just click the box that says, yes, I would like a pen pal. And then the system will provide you with the email addresses of 3 people who are within 10 years of you in age, who have the same parenting situation you do. So either do or don't have kids. Also, we can narrow it down to have minor children at home, have adult children. And then they will also match you with somebody who is within about 6 months of you in the time since your person died. So to be clear, this is not intended to be a mentor-mentee situation. This is intended to connect you with somebody who's living the experience the same time you are and has a lot of things in common with you. Now, sometimes people will write 3 people and, it's just no good, no match. You're able to request additional matches. And then my dad died in 2021 and my mom became widowed. And so my mom has like 6 pen pals. So, you can have as many pen pals as you want. You can have as few pen pals as you want. And what has developed, though, is this beautiful opportunity. It's really good for people who aren't interested in like a forum sort of situation. So we do have a forum. Our online forum is called Widowed Village. And you can, it's like message boards and opportunities to post and comment. And I like to think of it sort of as like a protected Facebook for widowed people. I say protected because it does require people to apply and be approved. And in the approval, we confirm their widowhood. There's a lot of different ways to do that. So we try to be very sensitive to allowing people a huge opportunity for, here's all the ways you could possibly confirm for us that you are widowed. But there's a firewall and you can only be behind and interacting once you've been approved. So but that forum allows that kind of interaction. For some people, that's just not what they want. And I think those people are really interested in the opportunity to connect one-on-one. And that Widowed Pen Pal it's been active for 17 years, which is incredible. So it was active even before Soaring Spirits was incorporated as a nonprofit, because it was just like the first thing I was like, well, we could try this. And so here we are all these years later, and many, many, many matches of pen pals. And I always wanted people just to be able to have a connection like the one I have with Michele.
I think that's pretty amazing. When you think of pen pals, right? That's something, I mean, I'm quite a bit older. I'm 57. That was something we did when we were kids, and it went out of vogue. It went out with, hand sewing and letter writing, that sort of thing. Yeah. But I love it that those personal connections, because that's the key to it. It's a personal connection. Yeah. And you don't have to be close. You can actually email, which is a lot easier even, than writing a letter. What's been so
beautiful is to watch these relationships develop. I mean, because what happened for Michele and I was really just the natural progression. It was like, we've been writing to each other so much, we should just talk on the phone. Yeah. And then when we talk on the phone so much, it was like, I can't believe we've not met in person. And I think it's especially true for people who are sharing a grief experience, right? It's so intense and it's so personal immediately, because you're not capable of wearing the mask you might wear typically, because you're so raw and you're struggling through something that's so life-altering that suddenly everything's in question. And so when you're interacting with another person and you're both in that space, you just become close so quickly. and close in a different way. Like you could be talking to your pen pal for months and think, oh my gosh, you know what? I never even asked what you do for a living. Do you work?
Right.
You know, you skip all of the things that in, normal social circles, you would have been talking about. Those are the key things you start with. You skip those right over. And so it's really interesting to give people the opportunity to have these deep connections and to witness the evolution of that and how closely that matches what happened for Michele and I. And I, another just like a life experience was that we had one of those very early pen pals that became very close friends. And one of the pen pals wrote to me when her partner in her pen palness died. And she was like, I feel I'm bereft, my pen pal died. And so where did she go? She went to Soaring Spirits to say, this person who I connected with, I knew you'd want to know, is what she told me. I knew you'd want to know. And so, this beautiful opportunity to literally have this person with you through the rest of your life, what a gift. It's an honor to be a part of that kind of connection.
So do you think that people get comfortable in that space writing to each other because some of those expectations of the social things are just set aside? A lot of that stuff doesn't seem to matter anymore because there's a huge elephant in the room that crowds out everything else. And you're in your own room with an elephant. Yeah. So let's both talk about our elephants. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think it's so interesting because that happens in person too. So yes, I think that the beauty of the writing and the connection in that way is that for people for whom that is the most comfortable way to express themselves, especially around their elephant, I think it's a beautiful connection that typically you don't find, especially in that one-on-one, the way that we connect people one-on-one. I should say that, over the years, we've also sort of developed the program to allow people, for example, let's say they're in the LGBTQ plus community, and that's more important to them to have somebody in a shared community than it is how long they've been widowed or whether or not they have the same family situation. They can make that a priority. It also has given us the opportunity to provide, for example, suicide survivors an opportunity to connect with another suicide survivor. And so there are some new elements to the program that didn't exist in the early stages that have reflected what we've learned are some of the key things that people care about in making those personal connections. But I just wanted to take what you've said one step further and say that in our in-person programs, we find the same thing is true. The elephant is no longer an elephant that we try to walk around, but it's an elephant that we talk about the trunk and we show the feet and we stand next to and pet. And we're like, this is my elephant. Where's your elephant? And so we're so busy talking about our elephants that we forget to talk about all of the other things that socially usually would be the thing we would talk about and that we might feel confident and comfortable talking about. And when you're grieving, and you feel like the elephant's following you everywhere you go, and you're in a different social circle trying to talk about what you do for a living, while you're like, but have you seen my elephant? And everyone else is like, no, thank you. I don't want to even look at your elephant, let alone pet it.
You have an elephant? I can't even see it.
Exactly. Please don't talk about that. And so I think that that's what's been so powerful about these connections is that there's an assumption that we're going to talk about the elephant. The elephant is, you're asking, where is your elephant? Why don't I see an elephant with you? Instead of pretending like it doesn't exist. And when you are able to be in that space with other people, it wipes out so many other things that would usually divide us. And we forget to ask about the things that might be divisive. And we forget to ask about the things that you're like, I don't care if your hair is purple, and I've never thought that dyeing your hair is something that anyone should ever do, no matter what color, because I can't even see your purple hair. What I see is that you have had the similar loss as I have. And can we talk about that? And it has been incredible to be in a diverse community with people who have every kind of life experience that might in other situations put them on one side or another, and watch them come to the center and allow grief and humanity to be the thing that holds the room instead of, what political party are you a part of? What are your religious beliefs? What kind of things do you, what causes do you care about? While all of that still participates in so much as it makes us a part of who we are, Those are not the important things. It's all about the elephant. It's all about my elephant and your elephant. And let's talk about our elephants. Oh my gosh, look, our elephants have the same size feet. And when you find somebody who that is true with, that's the only thing that matters.
As a solo caregiver for an adult male suffering with incontinence, the nightly interruption of a bedding and clothing change ensures that nobody gets a good night's sleep. Well, now, with a quick change wrap, you can make that change quickly with no lifting, turning, or rolling over. It takes just a couple of minutes, then you're both back to sleep. In fact, there's hardly any disruption to your male patient. He doesn't even have to be awake. The quick change wrap folds around the source of urine and wicks it away, protecting surrounding skin, clothing, and bedding. The quick change incontinence wrap that is so effective and convenient, it will change the way you provide care to your male patient, for the better. Combine the quick change wrap with an adult diaper for superior protection. It takes just a minute or two for one person to change the quick change wrap regardless of size, anatomy, or weight of the patient. 800 hospitals use it. Now you can get it at home. Visit quickchange.com now. The Heart of Hospice is excited to connect you with Odonata Care. The owners and founders, Nancy Hireman and Brenda Kazire, are experts in end-of-life care with over 40 years combined experience as certified hospice and palliative nurses. They are the hospice care queens. Odonata's mission is to transform the end-of-life experience through education and support. Their 32-page booklet, The Care Plan, A Path to Comfort for the Hospice Patient, empowers patients and their caregivers with valuable information that can be accessed anytime, day or night. Odonata Care also offers a suite of 50 free YouTube videos that teach both bedside care for the public and caregivers, and train professionals new to the practice of hospice. Odonata Care wants to support every patient admitted to hospice care. Their bottom line is caring for the patient, and that's why their motto is, Care is Treatment. Purchase copies of The Care Plan for yourself or your hospice agency at thecareplan.net. Now, back to today's episode.
One of your biggest programs that you have is Camp Widow. You referred to it earlier. Tell me about Camp Widow.
Camp Widow is actually the reason Soaring Spirits exists. Because at the end of my initial search for other widowed people, when I was like, okay, I just want to bring widowed people together. Michele and I were driving, we were driving home from having our first visit to her husband's grave. It's in a beautiful little white clapboard chapel in Texas, backwoods of Texas. So we're driving home and I'm saying to her, like, I just want to bring all these people together. Like, I'm thinking it's like a weekend. Her eyes get really big, like, oh God, where are we going with this? And I'm thinking, and it, like you have social pieces of it. We have a dance party. I think there should probably be a 5K. Then there'll be like workshops and stuff.
Wow.
And she's thinking, you have lost your mind, lady. And I'm like, but so like, she's like, who's going to come? I'm like, any widowed person. Where are we going to find them? Well, there's a lot of them. Like, what if we just say like, okay, widowed people come. And so that idea, Camp Widow really is very much still that exact thing. And what I wanted was so the way I describe it now, it's a blend between a conference, a retreat, and a high school reunion. We use elements from all three of those. And the purpose is to help widowed people have access to tools, resources, and community that will help them rebuild their lives. So the way we look at it is people have come to us, they've already experienced this tragic loss. Their life has been altered in ways that they didn't sometimes ask for or expect. And now the question on every plate, every widowed person's key question, what do I do now? And so each of us have to learn to answer that for ourselves. Each of us have to find our own way forward. And when we can do that with a community of people who are also making their own way forward, we have the opportunity to provide some really unique support. And Camp Widow provides that. So you'll be able to choose between workshops that apply to both your interests, but also what we have learned through our research center. So Soaring Spirits has a research center. It's called the Soaring Spirits Resilience Center. And what we study is resilience in widowhood. What key elements are going to help our widowed people build lives that they care about, they want to live, and that are meaningful after their person dies? One of the things we discovered is that how long you've been widowed really does influence the information that you need at these critical junctures, right? So the first one is called newly widowed, and that's for someone who's been widowed less than a year. So you have not yet made your way through the calendar year. The second one's called recently widowed. That's 1 to 3 years, where people still feel very newly widowed, and there are still new things that they have not yet done. There's still many firsts ahead of them, but they have made it through that first calendar year, and they are now in the midst of the really beginning of, what do I do with myself now? Middle widowed is 3 to 5 years. And those are people who, it's interesting because I just recently got a graph that sort of spoke to the increase of need for support for widowed people at about the 2.5 year mark, almost perfectly intersects with the steep decline in available support. Because people believe by the time you're around 3 years widowed that you've got it handled. You're good. You've been doing it. Clearly you're running your life. Okay, we're so glad that you made it through that. Truth is that you're in the midst now of the crisis of, who am I? And now, okay, yeah, I can do this, but I want a life. And I'm not sure how quite to make one. So we call those the middle years, 3 to 5. Then we have seasoned widowed, which is anybody who's been widowed 5 years or more. They're also a super interesting group because if you've been widowed 5 years, definitely everyone around you thinks you're fine. And you may still be in the midst of a couple of things. One, you might still be trying to figure yourself out. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Two, you're probably facing some new life experiences. Maybe kids are graduating. Maybe, you've had a key birthday. Maybe you're retiring. Like all of the things that your person was supposed to be there for is not there for. And now people around you think you're fine. In addition to that, you might be blending a family. You may be welcoming a new relationship. You might be in the midst of trying to figure yourself out while you still love the person who's dead. And also you love this new live person. And you've got to figure out where do they each fit in your life. And so you can see that just those easy descriptions can tell you that what you might need in terms of resources, programming will be different. And so people can come to camp. They will find workshops designed to address the needs of all 4 of those different time frames, we call them. And then there's also the trauma track, which is to address people whose experiences have included significant traumatic loss. That can be, that includes our suicide survivors, homicide, complicated relationships in all the ways, as well as addiction deaths. So those are just a few of the things that are included in the trauma track. And then we also have an LGBTQ plus track, which is designed to address the unique experiences for our LGBTQ plus widowed people. Within the broader scope, we also have our BIPOC group so that people can connect with other people who may be underserved and underrepresented, not only in, across every program, but specifically in grief-related programs. And so Camp Widow sort of designed, it starts on a Friday at 9 a.m. and it goes to a Sunday at noon. And from Friday to Sunday, the transformation that happens for people who attend is truly incredible. You walk up thinking, what in the world am I doing? Why would anybody come to something called Camp Widow, let alone pay money to attend? Why would I do that? And then you see them on Sunday at 11:30 and it's time for us to get them out of the room because the next group is supposed to have our room. And they're like, no, we don't want to go. Don't make us go. Can't we all just stay here at the hotel for the rest of our lives? And so it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And again, the whole intention, the purpose is so easy to sum up. It's to help widowed people have access to tools that help them rebuild their lives, because you must rebuild your life. There's no question. And even if you built a life that looks exactly from the outside like the one that you were living before your person died, I can assure everyone that you have built a different life, because your person is not physically present and you have to figure out who you are in that space and what you will do with yourself as you move forward.
Yeah, your inner self is different.
Your inner self is different. Your situation is different, and your access to support is different. And so that's another beautiful thing about the Camp Widow experience. In fact, we just got back from Camp Widow. There are two different formats, actually. One is the weekend long, which I just described. The other is called a pop-up, which is a one-day event. And the pop-ups travel. So we go to different locations or serve different specific groups through our pop-up program. But I just returned from a weekend long camp in Tampa, and one of the campers told me that he has now a text stream with 15 people. And so the 15 of them have created a text group, and they are providing each other support daily. I'm sure probably more than daily, maybe even sometimes hourly, but they have this opportunity now to have been in person. Like we just talked about, they shared all their elephants. And so this is a stream of conversation where when you're out in the world and somebody pretends you don't have an elephant, you can text your friends that do and say, hey, I was just at a party and that person, you acted like my person never existed. I said, their name and they ran away. I can text my friends who will say the name with me and immediately be reconnected to a community of support that understands why that's so important.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end of the interview, and I want to ask you a couple of more things, but tell my listeners how they can find Soaring Spirits and look into Camp Widow and the Pen Pal program.
SoaringSpirits.org will find you all of the things. We do have a lot of websites. So start at SoaringSpirits.org. It will take you to the Camp Widow website. It'll take you to the Widowed Village website, which is where you'll find Widowed Pen Pal. It also will give you an opportunity to see a library of books that have been suggested by our many, many community members. There's a document center there that gives you an opportunity to have a lot of different information easily shareable. All of our documents are downloadable for free. And so you'll find a plethora of resources there. And I do want to also mention that there are resources that are valuable to any person, not just widowed people. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that for so many of us who have supported a widowed person in our life, I'm speaking now personally about my mom. It's like when somebody you love becomes widowed, the intense need to help, right, is like so on right at the top of it's like you feel it on your skin. I want to help you. How can I help you? Especially because the problem can't be solved, right? The person is dead and there's nothing that's going to change that. And so I encourage people who know someone who's widowed to check out the resources of Soaring Spirits, because we will give you the opportunity to provide some support and to point them in a direction where they can find their people. And I promise you that if you are the person who connects them to their people, they will never forget that. And they will be endlessly grateful for the opportunity to have been connected, and you get to be the connector. What a great thing.
Awesome. I will have a link to your website in the show notes, but I want to leave the listeners with one last question and some insight from you, because the key to all of this is storytelling. Your work at Soaring Spirits International came out of your story. So if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice to who you were as a newly widowed person, what would you tell yourself?
I love this question because, first of all, my answer is funny. I would just tell myself to revel in this time. And I think that people might want to just sit back with that for a second. And the reason I say that is because I was really in a hurry to get done. I wanted to make my way through the grief experience. I wanted, it's funny. I wanted and now provide a checklist. So Soaring Spirits does have a checklist. It's not the one that I thought I would have created at the time, but I really wanted someone to say, here, do it this way. Here's how you do it. I had to learn for myself, of course, that we're all going to do it our own way. But in my desire to have a checklist, my really overriding desire was to get through this as quickly as possible. If I had had a checklist, I would have rushed through even one of them, every item, so that I could have checked them all off. And the truth is that you are only newly bereaved one time. With every new experience of grief and death, you grieve a person in that new phase only once. And I rushed through grieving Phil in those early days because it hurt so much. And so I like to give people this advice. First of all, be gentle with yourself and allow yourself the time to be newly bereaved and to be in that pain, because you won't revisit it that way ever again. And though it is so painful and so scary to feel like maybe you'll never get out of it, if you can surround yourself with support and I know that some people don't have immediate access to support. One of the reasons why Soaring Spirits exists is to provide that support for people who maybe don't have the kind of support that I was fortunate to have at the time. But allow yourself this time, because you will never get it back. And so you're becoming, and in the becoming, whatever you're going to be next, it's painful and it's scary and it's messy and it's all of the things. The more kindness and grace you can give to yourself, the better. And also make space for it, because the mess is necessary to discover who you're going to be next.
That's good advice. Good advice from somebody who knows. Michele, thank you for being so transparent, sharing your story here today, sharing the work that Soaring Spirits International, 15 years old this year.
Yay.
Big year,
yeah.
Big milestone birthday.
Big year for us.
Yeah. So thank you for talking with me. There's so many people who can relate and connect with your experience, and I'm so glad and grateful for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate so much what you guys are doing. So, getting the help to people by sharing in this way is so powerful. Thanks so much for having me.
So hopefully by now you understand the connection and the usefulness of Soaring Spirits International, not only for yourself personally in case you are a widowed person, or if you know somebody who is a widowed person, but also if you are a hospice professional, a chaplain, or a social worker who is involved with the bereavement care that your agency provides, Soaring Spirits International can be an amazing resource. So through Michele's personal story, losing her husband Philip in a bicycle accident, she began to look for other widowed people because she needed to know, what do I do now? Which is probably the universal widowed question. What am I supposed to do with this? What do I do now? She found herself with no roadmap, and she said she was looking for the checklist. Where's the checklist? How do I know how to do this if I don't have my tasks laid out in front of me? It changed her life to meet other widowed people, and she set up Camp Widow, this amazing gathering providing support and resources and encouragement and community for all these widowed people. And Soaring Spirits International offers support to anybody who's lost the person they thought they would spend the rest of their lives with. So widows come in all different shapes and sizes and length of time. That's one of the important things that she said that really stuck with me. People who have been widowed for 4 months, people who have been widowed for 14 years. All still navigating widowhood. Having similar losses helps widowed people express their experiences with one another. No matter how different they might be otherwise, they're able to find common ground in that widow experience. So Camp Widow is a combination of conference, retreat, and high school reunion, which to me sounds like there's rest and relaxation, some fun, some learning opportunities, networking and connection and support. And it helps people to answer the question, like Michele had, what do I do now? I really found Michele's advice to her newly widowed self very interesting. And I think at first I misunderstood it. I misunderstood what she was saying, but as she explained it, it made sense. She advised her younger self to sort of revel in the experience. And my first impression was to find joy somehow in it. And I misunderstood what she meant. What she meant was be immersed in it. Allow yourself to sit there, however painful that might be, because it's not going to come again like that. The grief will change. Your widowhood changes. You move through life events and the changes that are inevitably going to happen. So sit there with the intensity and the enormity of those emotions and that grief experience. I would encourage you to check out her website, soaringspirits.org. A lot of resources there. And if you remember, Michele said most of those are free except for Camp Widow. Michele also has a book. It's called Different After You, Rediscovering Yourself and Healing After Grief or Trauma. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can find the book and purchase it for yourself. And of course, there'll be a link to the Camp Widow site and also to soaringspirits.org. So check out Soaring Spirits International. They're doing some amazing work that could really be of benefit to so many people. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram. Send your questions or comments by email to me at helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.